A 17-year-old shepherd boy in a striped wool coat is sleeping on a sheepskin in his father's tent in a place called Hebron in 1700 BC. He has 11 brothers. 10 of them hate him. The other one is only 6 years old and hasn't decided yet. His father loves him too much, and his brothers know it. He has the coat to prove it. The coat is the long one with the long sleeves and the 4 colors. The kind of coat you do not give a working shepherd because it gets in the way of working. The coat is a statement. The statement is, this son will not have to work the way you work. That night, he dreams about wheat. About bundles of wheat in a field. His own bundle stands up, and the 11 other bundles bow down to it. He wakes up. He tells his brothers. They want to kill him. The next night, he dreams again. This time, the sun and the moon and 11 stars are bowing down to him. He tells his father this time. His father. A man named Jacob, the same Jacob who once wrestled an angel at a river, listens carefully. And then his father does something almost nobody notices in the text. He keeps it. Genesis chapter 37, verse 11. But his father kept the matter in mind. 13 years later, that boy will be the second most powerful man on the planet. Pharaoh, the god king of Egypt, will personally place his own signet ring on the boy's finger. The drought that is about to swallow the entire ancient Near East will not kill Joseph's family because of a dream that a 17-year-old had in his father's tent. A dream his brothers laughed at. A dream that, by every law of how the world works, should have been forgotten by sunrise. It wasn't. You should pay attention to this, because Joseph's dream is not a unique event in the Bible. It is the opening of a pattern that runs from the book of Genesis to the year you and I currently live in. There are exactly 12 dreams in Scripture that God uses to rewrite history. Not to comfort someone, not to warn one person about one storm, but to change the trajectory of nations. Sometimes the dreamer is a prince, sometimes a slave, sometimes a foreign king who has never heard the name of the God of Israel, sometimes a Roman governor's wife waking up at dawn with her hair tangled and her hands shaking. We will get to her, but not yet. This is not a story about superstition. This is not a story about coincidence. This is not a story about the unconscious mind. This is a story about every time the God of the universe walked into a sleeping human being's brain and rerouted 3,000 years of human civilization with a single picture. Stay with me. The first one will surprise you, because it is not Joseph 60 miles north of Hebron. 400 years before Joseph's dream, an old childless man named Abram is lying down in the Negev desert. He is somewhere in his late 70s. He has been promised a son by an invisible God, but the years have passed and the son has not come, and Abram is starting to wonder. He falls asleep, and while he sleeps, Genesis chapter 15 says, "A deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him." The Hebrew word for that deep sleep is tardemah, the same word used at the creation of Eve, the same word used when God puts a man under to do supernatural work inside him. And while Abram is under, God shows him 400 years of his descendants' future in a single condensed dream: slavery in Egypt, deliverance, return, inheritance. Doesn't Abram wakes up? He doesn't tell anybody for years. But by the time he is finished telling people, the Hebrew people exist as a Hebrew people because of that dream. Now go back to Joseph. His brothers throw him in a pit. They sell him to a passing caravan of Ishmaelite traders for 20 pieces of silver. And remember that number, because in 2,000 years, it will reappear on a different mountain, in a different garden, give or take 10 coins. The traders take him to Egypt. He becomes a slave in the house of a man named Potiphar. He gets framed by Potiphar's wife. He ends up in an Egyptian prison. In the prison, 2 other prisoners have dreams. One is Pharaoh's chief cupbearer. One is Pharaoh's chief baker. Both dream on the same night. Both wake up disturbed, and Joseph, the boy who once dreamed his way into a striped coat, now 28 years old, in chains, in a foreign prison, looks at them and says, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer dreams about 3 branches of a vine and grapes he squeezes into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph interprets, "In 3 days, you will be restored." The baker dreams about 3 baskets on his head and birds eating from the top one. Joseph interprets more gently than you would expect. "In 3 days you will be hanged." Both come true. To the day, 2 years later, Pharaoh himself has a dream. He dreams about 7 fat cows grazing by the Nile. 7 thin cows come up out of the river and eat the fat ones. Then he dreams again, 7 full ears of grain. 7 thin scorched ears. The thin eat the full. Pharaoh wakes up, sweating. He calls in every magician and wise man in Egypt. And Egypt, in the 17th century BC, was the most sophisticated civilization on Earth, with libraries of dream interpretation tablets going back 1,000 years. And none of them can interpret it. The cupbearer remembers the Hebrew boy in the prison. They shave Joseph, put him in clean linen, and bring him before Pharaoh. Joseph says one thing first, and this is the line you should underline. "Not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." And then he interprets, 7 years of plenty are coming. 7 years of famine will follow. Store 1/5 of every harvest now. That is how Joseph becomes prime minister of Egypt. Here's what most people miss. The famine, when it comes, hits more than Egypt. It hits Canaan. The descendants of Abram are starving. They send the brothers down to Egypt to beg for grain. And the man behind the desk, who decides whether they live or die, is the boy they sold for 20 pieces of silver. 3 Old Testament dreams. 3 pivot points of an entire family line. 1 unbroken chain of dreaming. Hold on to that. Hundreds of years later, in 600 BC, a different prince in a different palace has a different dream. His name is Nebuchadnezzar. He is the absolute ruler of the Babylonian Empire, the man who burned Jerusalem, broke the temple, and dragged the people of Judah into exile. He is also losing his mind. He has a dream so disturbing he cannot remember it when he wakes up, and he demands that his wise men not only interpret it, but tell him what the dream itself was, or he will execute them, all of them. A young Jewish exile named Daniel, 20 years old, hears about the death warrant. He prays. That night, God gives Daniel the same dream Nebuchadnezzar had. The dream is a statue. Gold head, silver chest, bronze thighs, iron legs, feet of iron mixed with clay. A stone, cut without hands, strikes the feet, and the whole statue collapses, and the stone grows into a mountain that fills the earth. Daniel interprets, 4 kingdoms will rise and fall, and at the end the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful pagan king in the world, bows down to Daniel. He says, "Truly your God is a God of gods." 2 empires later, those 4 kingdoms, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, would rise and fall exactly as Daniel said. And the historian Josephus, writing 600 years afterward, says Alexander the Great himself, on the road to Jerusalem in 332 BC, was shown the book of Daniel by the high priest and spared the city because of what he read about himself in those pages. Stay with me. We are about to cross from the Old Testament into the New, and the dreams do not stop. They get more specific. They start protecting the most important child in human history. If this is hitting you and you are still here at the halfway mark, leave one word in the comments. Joseph, Pharaoh, Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel. Whichever name is louder in your head right now. I read every one. And if you want the second half, the dream that saved the baby Jesus. The dream that warned the wise men. The dream Pilate's wife had at dawn, and the one nobody talks about because it is buried in the book of Acts. Make sure you are subscribed before you scroll. 2 new explanations every week, Wednesdays and Sundays. Lamplit word. Now back to the manger. It is roughly 2 years after the birth of Jesus. Wait, 2 years? Yes, you have probably been taught that the wise men showed up on Christmas night with shepherds and angels and a baby in a manger. They did not. The Greek word Matthew uses for the child when the Magi arrive is pagan. Toddler, small child, not infant. They arrive at a house, not a stable. Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. You can look it up. These Magi are Persian astronomer priests. They have traveled roughly 1,000 miles following a star they read as a sign of a new king of the Jews. They go first to King Herod in Jerusalem, because that is where you go if you are looking for a Jewish king. And Herod, who has already murdered his own wife and 3 of his own sons to protect his throne, smiles at them and says, "Find him and come back and tell me where he is, so I can also go and worship him." Then the Magi leave. That night, all of them have the same dream. Matthew chapter 2, verse 12. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their own country by another way. One sentence. No detail about the dream. No description. Just a warning, planted in the brains of foreign Persian astronomers, that saves the life of the toddler Jesus by hours. Maybe less. That same night, or perhaps the next, Joseph, the carpenter, the husband of Mary, has a dream of his own. An angel says, "Get up. Take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt. Herod is going to look for the child to kill him." Joseph wakes Mary in the dark. They pack what they can carry. They are out of Bethlehem before dawn. By sunrise, Herod's soldiers reach Bethlehem. You know what they did. Matthew records the screaming and the mothers, and the verse from Jeremiah. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. The toddler Jesus is alive because of 2 dreams that night. 2 dreams in 2 different brains. One in a foreign caravan. One in a young Jewish carpenter's mind. Years pass. Herod dies. Another dream comes to Joseph in Egypt. It is safe. Go home. Joseph obeys. They start the journey back. And then, halfway home, Joseph dreams. Again. This time a warning that Herod's son Archelaus is reigning in Judea, and he should settle further north, in Galilee, in a town called Nazareth. 3 dreams. 3 relocations. The childhood of Jesus is not a story about a stable. It is a story about a carpenter who keeps falling asleep and waking up with marching orders. Now think about this for a second. If even one of those dreams had been ignored, if Joseph had rolled over and gone back to sleep, if the Magi had decided the dream was just nerves, there would be no Sermon on the Mount. There would be no Lazarus walking out of a tomb. There would be no empty grave outside Jerusalem. There would be no church reading these words today. The trajectory of 2,000 years of human history hinges on the question of whether a tired carpenter took his dreams seriously. He did. There is one more. The one I told you about. Easter morning is not yet dawn, and a Roman woman named Claudia, the wife of a provincial governor named Pontius Pilate, is asleep beside her husband in their palace in Jerusalem. They have a comfortable life. They eat well. They sleep well. They do not pay attention to local Jewish religious controversies. Or at least, they didn't. That morning, she dreams. Matthew chapter 27, verse 19. While Pilate is sitting on the judgment seat, while the crowd is screaming, while a Jewish carpenter from Nazareth is standing bound in front of him with a crown of thorns already on his head, a servant pushes through the crowd with a note from Pilate's wife. The note says, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream." A pagan Roman woman, married to one of the most powerful men in the Eastern Empire, and she calls him righteous. Without ever meeting him, because of a dream, Pilate reads the note, and then he washes his hands. Origen, 200 years later, said this about Claudia's dream. God sent it, knowing it would not stop the crucifixion, because the crucifixion had to happen. But God still spoke, because God always speaks, even when he knows the world is not going to listen. That is the pattern. 3 takeaways. Take them slow. 1. God does not stop talking when the lights go out. The Hebrew word, chalom, and the Greek word, onar, both mean dream, and both words appear more than 100 times in the Bible. From Abram in the Negev to John on Patmos, the night is not silence. The night is a different language. If you are not sleeping much because the world is heavy, that is the time God has historically used the most. 2. Most of the dreamers in this video were not religious professionals. They were a teenage shepherd, a pagan emperor, Persian astronomers, a Roman wife, a scared carpenter. The dream is not for the qualified. The dream is for the available. If God wakes you up at 3 in the morning with something you cannot explain, write it down. Joseph did. Daniel did. Mary's husband did. There is a reason all of them remembered the next morning. 3. And this is the one that should sit you down. There is a difference between a dream and a vision and a hallucination, and the Bible knows the difference. Saul of Tarsus saw a vision on the road to Damascus in broad daylight. That was not a dream. That was something else. Peter on the rooftop in Joppa fell into a trance, Greek ecstasis. That was also not a dream. The dreams in this video happen during real sleep, in real beds, in real ordinary nights. Augustine, 1500 years ago, said the test of whether a dream is from God is not whether it is dramatic, but whether it produces obedience by morning. The shepherds of Bethlehem went to find the baby. The carpenter packed for Egypt before dawn. The Persian astronomers changed routes. The pagan wife wrote a note. By the morning, every one of them had moved. Which dream in this video hit you the hardest? Joseph's wheat? Daniel's statue? The carpenter's flight to Egypt? Claudia's note? Tell me below. I read every single one. Subscribe before you leave. 2 new explanations. Every week. Wednesdays and Sundays. The God who walked through Joseph's brain in a tent in Hebron is the same God who can walk through yours tonight. Seep well.